On that day, he presented 3 documents: the FIROS receipt, the Gazette, fake Gazette. He went, stole a Gazette, tried to obliterate the value of the Gazette, superimposed his photograph in the Gazette, and tender it. And that Gazette sought to correct the over 11 forgeries of name, forgery of birth, forgery of certificates, all of those. So that Gazette, the purpose of that Gazette is to use it, federal government document, to cover it all. And if you saw the judgment from either to a great woman, Justice Shade, he said, this Gazette, as presented, has reconciled and corrected, so to speak, all the anomalies in the names. But unknown to this great judge, the Gazette itself is fake. And said the Gazette as presented by Sheriff in May 2022 as Gazette coming, there's only one authority in Nigeria and in every country in the world that produces Gazette is the federal government. That Gazette as presented is fake. It did not emanate from them. It's not their document. Went further and released to us draft Gazette that will be produced in the future, which has not been produced, that the entire year 2022 we did not produce any Gazette, as led by Dodo SAN, were all fake documents just to mislead the court. But by the grace of God, we have unearthed the document, we have told the world, we are publishing the document that this is fake. Okay. And the head of service have said it is fake. So everything they got on the basis of that fake document remains fake.
So I keep hearing you say it's fake. The Gazette, the documents are fake, they are forged. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and I'd like you to unbundle them in one breath, because I know that you, aside the fact that you are a legal practitioner, you are a criminologist, and then you understand the fact that there could be some slander in this. So do you have evidence in the fact that they faked the documents that you were talking about? That's one on the side. And then secondly, you said that they even took it to the Supreme Court. And then I'm just wondering, how come the court, they cannot decipher between a fake Gazette and an original one until you had to go to the head of service? In the words of Abraham Lincoln, who is an American lawyer, politician, and statesman who served as the 16th president of the United States from 1861 until his assassination in 1865, he once said, "Elections belong to the people. It's their decision. If they decide to turn their back on the fire and burn their behinds, then they will just have to sit on their blisters." Oops, that's deep. All right, we'll take our next one, and this one is from Isaac Asimov, who is an American writer and professor. Once said, "Anti-intellectualism has been a constant thread winding its way through our political and cultural life, nurtured by the false notion that democracy means that my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge." Oops, that's another deep one. And my last quote for today is from Winston Spencer Churchill, a British statesman, soldier, and writer who served as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom twice. And that's from 1940 to 1945 during the Second World War, and again from 1951 to 1955. He once said, The best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. Absolutely spot on. Now let's see how this could relate to what we'll be discussing tonight. Very warm greetings and welcome to The Conversation. We're reaching you from Kaftan's Television here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabelle Oji. Tonight, we will take our attention to legal matters as Nigerians await the verdict of various election petition tribunals across the Federation. Some concerned Nigerians or citizens have concluded plans for a 1 million man march across some cities in the country on the need to for the judges handling election cases to be above board. The 1 million man march, with its motto, which says, "Let us take Niger back," will hold on August 28 in Lagos, Delta, and 30th August in Edo, 30th August in Port Harcourt, September 1st, and Anambra, September 1st. According to the group, the march will hold across the nation in solidarity and support for the judiciary for them to uphold justice in Nigeria in the ongoing electoral petitions. So we'll fix our gaze on that report, and then we'll also talk about other things as we'll be discussing with Kenneth Gbagi, who is SDP governorship candidate in Delta State. I will see you after this time out. Join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from Kaftan's Television here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Now let's go straight to a conversation for today. And my guest is Chief Kenneth Gbagi. He is SDP governorship candidate in Delta State. Great to have you on the show again, sir.
Thank you very much and good evening.
Good evening to you. Okay, so since after the last time we had this conversation, I recall that you were in court and then you sent in some petitions with regards to how the Delta State gubernatorial elections panned out, which you were not happy about. First, let's start in that regard. How far so far?
We finished our submissions at the tribunal. Of course, needless of going through the processes, but suffice it to say that we had adopted our written address at the tribunal, and the tribunal had adjourned for judgment. But a quick scenario that played out on the last day before the adoption of our written address. Just after the submission of our case, we discovered that there were certain forgery, fraudulent documentation contained in the submission of the purported governor. Put it very mildly, I'm a criminologist. What I'm gifted with is looking at documents and scenarios. So
Sorry, I have to butt in there. When you say the governor, you're talking of the current governor or the previous one?
No, I'm talking of, it's purported. It's not a governor. You cannot put something on nothing. It doesn't work that way. So we looked at that document and we had applied to the head of service for the authenticity of that Gazette. And put it very mildly, Nigerians should be mindful of supporting criminality and want the best for the country and want an image for the country when they themselves do not scorn like our parents did. When you do anything wrong, the Bible says chastise your child. So, given that scenario, the head of service wrote back on the 31st of January last year. SAN Dodo took Sheriff Oborevwori to the dock. And the first thing he does is to swear to an oath. Claiming to be Christian, so he swore that every and anything that is going to say before this court is the truth and nothing but the truth. So he was admitted to give evidence, and he was led in the evidence. On that day, he presented 3 documents: the FIROS receipt, the Gazette, fake Gazette. He went, stole a Gazette, tried to obliterate the value of the Gazette, superimposed his photograph in the Gazette, and tendered it. And that Gazette sought to correct the over 11 forgeries of name, forgery of birth, forgery of certificates, all of those. So that Gazette, the purpose of that Gazette is to use it, federal government document, to cover it all. And if you saw the judgment from either to a great woman, Justice Shade, he said, this Gazette, as presented, has reconciled and corrected, so to speak, all the anomalies in the names. But unknown to this great judge, the Gazette itself is fake. And one thing you should recall or understand about life is that once you start criminality, you don't stop, because you need one lie to cover another. You need 10 to cover one. So the Gazette he tendered, based upon the decision of Justice Shade that all is corrected, is fake. The man faked it. He stole it. So the judgment of Justice Shade has collapsed. And it is the same judgment that Justice Ige of the Court of Appeal relied on to say, look, this person has brought a Gazette, and the Gazette has corrected everything. Unknowing to them, the Gazette was fake. He stole them. So the judgment of Justice Ige has collapsed. It is the same Gazette and what have you they took to the Supreme Court, misleading the Supreme Court fraudulently to obtain that judgment. So all that is gone to no issue. Now, the head of service, upon our request in writing, wrote back and said the Gazette as presented by Sheriff in May 2022 as Gazette coming, there's only one authority in Nigeria and in every country in the world that produces Gazette, is the federal government. That Gazette as presented is fake. It did not emanate from them. It's not their document. Went further and released to us draft Gazette that will be produced in the future, which has not been produced, that the entire year 2022 we did not produce any Gazette. The federal government, under the office of the head of service, did not produce any Gazette. Gave us the letter and went further to attach what will be produced after vetting, if at all. Most probably not in the 2023. So that makes nuisance and a further criminal act of trying to pervert justice, of trying to mislead the entire process of our laws. So it was this document we sought to tender at the tribunal, and the tribunal judge unfortunately, was looking for a known authority for us to do so. But between you and I, look, the Court of Appeal only in the last 10, 12 days has come up with 3 judgments of cases on the basis of fair hearing. I mean, what is the basis of a tribunal with all the money and what government is spending, taxpayers' money, if you have a document that they need to accept for them to arrive at an equitable, fair judgment? Why would they refuse it? Nobody does that in the world. So if you saw what happened at the Court of Appeal a week and a half ago, they gave 3 judgments asking them, on the basis of fairness, you must accept whatever is relevant to your case to decide. And in the case of Aribishola versus Oyinlola, a classical case, even in that case, the tribunal had closed their case, they have adopted. But there was a government document certified, just as in this case, a certified document. So the whole world is watching, the whole world wants to know the basis of the chairman's decision not to have accepted the document. But we are very good. What had happened in law is that he may have dismissed the document, which, of course, thank God, life does not start and end with the tribunal. You have the possibility of an appeal, you have the possibility of going to the Supreme Court. But the danger and the joy we have and derive from that embarrassing situation of the day was that that document has now formed part of the records of the tribunal by law.
Okay.
So there's nothing anybody could do about that. I mean, we've just filed a simple appeal. That document that he sought to refuse will now form part of the document they must transmit to the Court of Appeal. So we're happy, very happy. There's nothing that has done. I mean, justice is justice. We'll do what is right. But I'm very happy with what has gone on. You know, I mean, obviously, with the plethora of cases in the Court of Appeal and what have you, you cannot put something on nothing. Apparently, all that young man had done in connivance, because that trial of the 31st of January, as led by Dodo SAN, were all fake documents, just to mislead the court. But by the grace of God, we have unearthed the document, we have told the world, we are publishing the document that this is fake. Okay. And the head of service have said it is fake. So everything they got on the basis of that fake document remains fake.
So I keep hearing you say it's fake. The Gazette, the documents are fake, they are forged. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and I'd like you to unbundle them in one breath, because I know that you, aside the fact that you are a legal practitioner, you are a criminologist, and then you understand the fact that there could be some slander in this. So do you have evidence in the fact that they faked the documents that you were talking about? That's one on the side. And then secondly, you said that they even took it to the Supreme Court. And then I'm just wondering, how come the court, they cannot decipher between a fake Gazette and an original one until you had to go to the head of service?
Thank you very much. I maintain my position that the documents are fake, and I know the implication of what I've said. Very well put. The man took an oath. The Gazette is alive. The date of the Gazette is there. How he faked it is there. The owner of the Gazette says, this Gazette is not ours. What else do you want to know? And he swore to an oath. That's very perjurious. And in any case, this man has a history. This man never went to primary school, he never went to any school. That's why he's been going. It is his brother, who is a pastor, that has those papers that he was touting. But it's not easy to tout papers that are not yours. So the question is that I maintain the fact that those documents are fake documents. They have no root, they have no foundation, and as such, it will not stand the test of time. Now, your second question is, we all do not have the same level of understanding. I have a bit more, not just being a lawyer. I'm a criminologist, and trust me, I've come from the best of it. I was talking about one of my friends who was the former Attorney General, one in Edo, one of the Federal Attorney General. We were all in Harvard together. And whilst we were in Harvard, we were doing an arbitration course at the time. Some discussions erupted in class, and it became so obvious that when it comes to the issue of crime and crime-related matters, give it to Kenneth. And that discussions that ensued in Harvard was very clear. What I'm saying is that what you do not see does not mean I will not say it. I mean, it all depends on our calling and our abilities. For instance, if I've gone into industry the way I've gone into industry, is because of my foresightedness and what I want to see. The document remains fake, but you have to make or produce records to that effect, which we have done in all intents and purposes. So there's nothing wrong. At the time we discovered it, we have discovered it. The Supreme Court himself did not see this document and do not have this document as a basis. Nobody was able to unearth it. Nobody thought of going to the head of service. Are you blaming me for being clever? Would you rather prefer that I'm dull? So what I'm saying is that we have gotten the document and we have shared it to the world. This is the document he presented. It is not from the authorities, and there's only one authority in Nigeria that can produce the document. And the authority says we don't own the document.
All right. I'll remind you of some of the statements that you made during our last chat. You said, I quote, the entire persons, the 4 of them who contested that election, that's the Delta State gubernatorial elections with you, are not qualified. And you also alleged that they all agreed to that effect or to that fact, including the electoral umpire. Do you still stand by that pronouncement that you made? Because let's start with that. Do you still stand by that pronouncement?
You see, there are things and there are persons in this country. We still have a lot of good people here. I mean, forget all the hues and cries about corruption, about whatever. We still have a lot of great people here. I was the former chairman of the Legal Aid Council of Nigeria. That not being just it, I was a former minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So were I to make comments, I know the weight of it. And not to talk of being a lawyer, I know the implications of what I'm saying. And these things I said them under oath. I know the implications of making statements under oath and the negative effect if what you said were found to be lies. But put it this way, I'm extremely very pleased. Extremely very pleased. I mean, in my petition, I have stated all these things you have mentioned. And I said the 4 of them were not qualified. None of the 4 of them have been able to contradict my statement. Rather, they are going around in circles, They have not. Up to their reply to my petition, up to the submission, their written address and everything, closing the case, they have not been able, because those are facts. Those are facts, unless you want me to, because I don't want a situation where, out of the subjudiceness of the case, they have agreed. They have already tendered their written addresses. They have adopted them. They have agreed that everything I said in my petition was correct. And nobody has been able to tell you anything to the contrary that, oh, if you said this about me, you had this to say. Because, I mean, say if you want to come for equity, you must come in clean hands. So they remain disqualified. And that's the step we have taken. There's no reason why. And in any case, if you go into a race, which is my argument, if you go into a race, a relay race or what have you, we've allocated numbers to 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's it is so discovered that all these 4 people are dope for the relay race. And you who took last in the relay race, but you didn't have dope, who is the winner?
The one without the dope.
The one without the dope. So if they were not qualified ab initio, which is the case, which they've all accepted, more or less, and I'm the only qualified person in the election, declare me the winner.
So you see that they have accepted, because in Nigeria, no one accepts that they are wrong and then still put their names on the ballot.
No, you see, they never knew. One of the greatest mistakes they made was that I was on the ballot. They never knew I was coming. And they never knew I had what I had. Because all of them are people I know to their credo. All of them. Except Oborevwori, who is older. But even at that, I went to London to bring Oborevwori back. So, Oborevwori, in his last interview with Arise, said that I was the one who brought him and settled him back to Nigeria. So I know all of them to their panties. And I have my facts. In fact, why I went into the election, people were surprised. Oh, the way you are going into the election, what is your gimmick? What is it? Because I knew they were not qualified. But they thought these facts were not known. And even if they knew they were criminals as they were or whatever it is, I did not have what it takes to bring them. And I brought them out. I'm saying today, they have not contradicted. None of them. Somebody called me, a judge of the Supreme Court called me 3 days ago and said, I'm surprised that Sheriff and his people have not been able to make a statement after such a weighty evidence of forging the federal government of Nigeria office of the president's document. What is he waiting for to make a statement? What statement will he make? One statement will elucidate to another statement. What statement do you want him to make?
Probably he's busy with administration.
You cannot be busy with any administration when your entirety had been called into question that you're a criminal. That's a criminal offense. To forge the federal government of Nigeria Gazette is a massive criminal offense. I mean, he's forged all his birth certificate, whatever. What they did with their lawyers, small world, was that with that deep hole, as it appears, of the Gazette, nobody could conduct. That's why you see the courts were misled to take all those decisions. Because with a deep hole of a Gazette of a federal government, no normal human being will do that. It is not in the psychic of anybody to have imagined that somebody will be that stupid to forge the federal government Gazette of Nigeria just to correct. And if you see that judgment of the Federal High Court, you say the deep hole, the Gazette, had reconciled all the forgeries of names. So it's clear. That was the purpose why they did it.
And so we hear that the reports allege bribery with regards to this case, and then how the judge must have been bribed and all. And then we keep hearing that at some point the judge is becoming the lawyer or the judge and the jury. What are your thoughts? What will you tell us in that regard?
I was in court. I was in court that day. Surprisingly, I saw a recorded clip of what took place that day in court. Before the trial judges came, we had filed an application asking the court to allow us put in this paper from the bar. An application that is elementary, if you ask me. So all the 6 lawyers in the matter had, I didn't know, because you see what happens is that when we go to court, all of them say, they talk in one direction, all the lawyers. So we were standalone. But one of the lawyers, a pastor of Redeem, as soon as I got into the court, said to me, oh, all 7 or 8 of us have agreed that. Because by law, simple by law, we filed a process. The only way you can be heard in court, except this particular tribunal, the only way you can be heard is that you must file a reply. So when the judge came in and said, Mato, move your case, Mato started. And did you file this paper? I say yes. Did you serve all these 7 lawyers? He says yes. And the judge asked them, were you served? He said yes. So when Mato finished, they wanted to reply, but by the simple practice of law, they have no right of replying. If they wanted to reply, they would have replied by filing their own documents. Are you getting me? Okay. They did not file, which means by simple understanding of the law, they've accepted everything we had filed. But this redeemed pastor who told me, say, look, we all have seen the paper and we are not objecting at all because there's nothing to object. So when the judge came in, the judge became the lawyer. He took the position. I mean, he descended to the arena. It was most shocking. He descended to the arena. So that, of course, gave rise to why 3 of the lawyers, who obviously will be destroyed by this document. And what's the basis? With all that we have submitted, we have a number of good reasons why they will take a right decision in favor of us. But this Gazette is just, oh my God, it's just an icing on the cake. And given what has transpired, it's only the judge who will explain to the world and maybe to the NGC or what have you, the drama that took place in court that day. It is, while the judge was saying that our application to reopen the case is novel, you will hear from the, says it's novel, it's one of its kind, but that is not true. Because, I mean, he said he read the case all the night, and of course, Oborevwori was there, which is a classical electoral matter conducted, and it's alive. Nobody has turned it down because that is a classical case where nobody has refuted it, or a higher court haven't ruled against it. So it is the classical of today. But he said, tell me, where are you coming from? Where is this a novelty? I use this word. It's a novelty. How does it become a novelty when so many years ago, I'm talking about Oborevwori versus Oyinlola in a governorship election, which is long. And he says, I read it overnight. So it is only him that will explain to the necessary authorities where he came from with that drama. Everybody, in fact, even the lawyers in court were, so he asked them, and all of them says, we leave it to your discretion, which is the position of the law. We leave it to your discretion, all of them. In fact, 3 outrightly said, sorry, we are not against this application. We leave it to you. And he just took it. And in what I consider very funny, he said this, what's it called? This application, as the lawyer was trying to make his point, he says, sit down, sit down. So the lawyer said, are you overruling me? He said, yes. And he says, we will rise. He came back and said, this application is dead on arrival. We didn't say anything because in any case, the application is now part of the process.
That was what I was going to ask you, if it is also part of your petition, all that happened in court then.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying now. For him to have heard us, even though he ruled dismissing the paper is now part of the records of that tribunal.
Okay.
So with our application yesterday to the Court of Appeal, what they are transmitting now include that paper. So the trouble of we trying to put the paper in at the Court of Appeal is no longer our problem. It's now part of the process. In any case, if you procure a judgment fraudulently, the great men, this profession is very unique. And they come to realize that these documents and this judgment you got was fraudulent. They will leave you in cold waters. So that's what has happened.
We actually due for a break, but because you landed at that word, they will leave you in cold waters, would definitely kickstart from there. Let's go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll continue this conversation with Chief Kenneth Gbagi. I will see you later.
I believe that there are some game playing out that maybe the president is not aware of. And if I give this strong advice as a criminologist who know a little bit in this country, I will say all that is the option on the table should be a diplomatic resolution of whatever it is. To go into an open war with Niger, the repercussions post the war will leave us with very, very unpleasant tastes. So what I'm saying in effect is that it will do us no good. You don't go into a venture that you will lose, and you will lose. It's not going to work. Are you going to sack all those senators? Are you going to sack the entire Senate? Are we in a going back to a military arrangement where you just take decision abruptly to say you are doing stuff? I think Tinubu is wiser than that, if you ask me.
All right. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We're reaching you from Kaftan's Television here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you've actually missed out on a whole lot, but then you can still join in the conversation. As our guest on the show today is Chief Kenneth Gbagi, who is SDP governorship candidate in Delta State. All right, before we went on that break, you actually talked about the legal system, the justice system, and that's where you anchored. So we'll take it up from there, as we've seen that some concerned citizens of Nigeria have concluded plans for a 1 million man march across some cities in the country for the need, they said, according to them, they said they need the judges handling election cases to be above board. And this march, according to them, is going to take place in Anambra, in Lagos, in Delta State, and in some other parts of the country. Then you had, and then they had that slogan, all eyes on the judiciary, even though the billboards were brought down at some point by the government, and then they had some reservation in that regard. But let's start with that, all eyes on the judiciary. Now, you, aside the fact that you have a petition that you filed in with regards to the election and how it went, how does all eyes on the judiciary resonate with you? Even sitting with the fact that you are also in that profession?
You see, I'm very happy with the rise of our younger ones, the rise of people. But I want to sound this note of our understanding. The law is very unique. There are things you do without understanding it. The reason why my case is very unique is that while I'm a lawyer, I'm looking at it from a legalistic point of view, I'm looking at it from a criminal point of view, there's no way any decision to the contrary of what we have filed and the documents we have exhibited will not have the approval of all the courts up to the Supreme Court because of the facts that are there. And each case is viewed individually. What are the technical flaws or what have you? But because we know this, I mean, put it this way, my father was a bailiff. if you know the bailiff of in those days, they are better and bigger than the judges because they know the rudiments of it. So I've come from a legal home and we understand all of this. And I believe very strongly that we have a very particular and pertinent reason and case, and by the grace of God, it's an opportunity to liberate Delta State. But having said so, I would like the masses, I would like the individual to align with legal minds to look at each. But definitely, we have their sympathy, we will support them. We ourselves will come out that day. Because
so you're joining the march?
I will.
Okay.
In Delta, I will. Because unless we get it right, Delta State has become, unfortunately, the cash cow in legal trappings since the democracy we started. And the money taxpayers would have used to do good things have all been ferried away through legal battles that are unnecessary. So what I'm saying is that I think it's God. One judge of the Federal High Court asked me yesterday, and this was the question. He said, Gbagi says, how did you see this Gazette and realize that it is fake? How? He said, I want to know what kind of God you serve. Because this Gazette that has come to the public glare has thrown the entire, it's just a waiting gunpowder. It has thrown the entire situation into the ruin. Because how did you make sense out of it? I say, give thanks to God. Everything has its beginning and its end when God is involved. So the question we have, we don't have any issue. We don't have a problem. We have said the basis you relied. And if you see in their submission at the tribunal on the closing date, they tendered everything that this fake Gazette has given to them. That's what they tendered because they don't have any case. That's all that they tendered. And that is what we have taken. Then you can understand why this judge, if at all, feels very funny to put in that document. Even though without that document, we are good to go. But how would you say a document coming from the federal government of Nigeria, certified, the law says if a government paper certified, you don't have it, take it! But something that is not clear to the eyes, the mind, and our head took place that Saturday. So we're waiting.
Even as you say that you're waiting, taking a cue from there, I'll still go back to that same insignia. All eyes on the judiciary. And I still hear you say that you're going with that, you're going forward with that march. And then some people will come out to say that when you make such statement, that's like blackmailing the judiciary. But then some other persons would come out and say that's just a subtle nudge, telling the judiciary that we know that you're doing good, but then just remember that whatever it is we're facing right here, you're also facing the same. So now, you're standing in this divide. Are you going to? Would you accept that slogan, "All eyes on the judiciary," is that a blackmail, or is that a subtle nudge telling the judiciary that I have my eyes on you, even as a judiciary?
I disagree with anybody who sees it as blackmail. The fact remains that it's a clear conscience fears no accusation. It's a slogan we all grew up with. So I don't agree at all. You know the case in, is it Kaduna or the tribunal in Kaduna? Or
Kano.
In Kano, by Justice Azinge. This judge, coming from a comfortable home, the Azinge family, you know them to a large extent, had raised an alarm that there's pressure, money everywhere over this case. I saw that the NBA wrote a letter asking her to be specific And I trust that judge, she will submit the information thereto. I'm going to talk to the president of the NBA. I mean, I'm a member of the NBA, so I'm going to talk to him. We are not unaware. But you see, as I've said, take individual cases as they come. The case in Kano might be different from the case in Lagos. The case in Lagos might be different from. How do this judge want to explain the refusal to take this document? Everybody in the country, every single judge, either High Court, Federal High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court Justice, has said, no, there's more to it that is the eyes, because this is a federal government document. You have no choice. You have no, there's no basis for you to refuse to admit the paper. And not only that, if you were to be privileged to listen to the activities of the day as recorded, which I just saw and listened to, everybody says, oh, there's something amiss. The judge has become the lawyer. The judge has become, he has descended to the arena. The best thing is for him to request himself. So what I'm trying to say is that even if I, because I'm coming from a law family, will not want to do anything, I'm not just alone in this. People have already drafted their petition that will go to NJC to say this is what has happened. And if NJC were to listen to that tape and listen to the comments coming from the judge actually made very frantic effort to lure my lawyer, Matu, to abandon that application. Because he says, what is your business? If somebody who filed the paper abandoned the paper, it means he doesn't believe in the paper. Why are you going to be carrying another man's paper? But that another man's paper you say we should not bring is the forged paper that the man has used from the Federal High Court to the Supreme Court. And you're advising us not to produce the paper. You don't understand? In that case, in that court, it says, Mato, why are you bothered about this paper? You didn't file the paper. They filed the paper and they abandoned it. Why is it your business to bring it up? But we knew what we were doing. We had our own meeting to say, whichever way, we have two legs. Let him accept the paper. If he wants to, because we've heard that he will not accept the paper. We've been told that they were meeting the previous night that he won't accept the paper. So we said, okay, but we have two legs. If he does not accept the paper, which is okay, we will move our application and that becomes part of the records of court. So we got that, so we're happy. So the question is that it is for him to say what he wants to say. It's for him to answer to his God, his conscience. And the only problem we have, whether all the three panel members are involved in whatever is being rumored with regards to bribery and whatever, we do not know, but we want to leave that.
Okay. So now, taking a cue from where you landed and what you've said about both the judge and the judiciary, I remember some people would actually say that when you file a case in court, just go to sleep with your two eyes closed. And I remember I asked you this question the last time we had this conversation, if you had hope in the judiciary being the last hope of the common man. But then some would actually remind you of the fact that in this part of the world, you cannot separate the executive from the judiciary. So again, I would ask you, Chief Kenneth Gbagi, do you have hope in the judiciary with regards to your case?
With regards to my case, I'm not with my eyes closed. That's the difference.
But you have hope.
Because my eyes are not closed, because I'm going to follow them back to back and make sure the judiciary will do the needful. I can tell you that. It is when you don't know. I know the law, largely. I know what is obtainable. I know what you can do and what you cannot do. I'm not young in the system.
So that means you're telling Nigerians that, yes, have hope in the judiciary, but make sure that you don't sleep with your eyes two eyes closed. Your
two eyes must be open with the judiciary.
Okay.
You must follow it back to back. You are in a war situation. And then where people have made a lot of allegations about money and bribery and what have you, a judge will be convenient, will be comfortable. There's what to say, this one is too hot. This one is too hot. I won't pursue it. So the question is that I'm following back to back. The entire proceeding in that case had been recorded by people. I don't know. There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest in the place. And where a judge obviously, the law, they say, is an ass. It has its root. And when you see a judge dancing, outside the root, it goes to show that something is a bit difficult to understand.
Despite the fact that they have sworn to that oath.
Look, I was talking to my friend. I have a very close friend, Ishesage, Professor Ishesage. I have a number of friends. I have had justices, friends, lawyers, SN, they are shocked. Now look, money is sweet, but money is not everything. There are times when you do not want to destroy your name, your family name, and anything that is left of you because of money. So I'm very happy I'm following my matter, and I'll follow it with close and rapt attention, and then we'll take it to a logical conclusion.
All right, so now let's divert a little bit and talk about the ministerial appointment. And then now we have new ministers. The FCT has a new landlord, and then you have other ministers. What are your thoughts with regards to the choice of ministers? We've heard people come out to say that it's just recycling old politicians, and then some of these people who were not elected from their state, and then you bring them to chair or to man a particular ministerial the position. What are your thoughts in all of that?
Don't forget that I was once a minister.
Yes, I know. That's why I'm asking you.
And then I rejected 3 ministerial appointments before the last one I took. In fact, when President Obasanjo had asked me to become a minister and which ministry I wanted to have after his election as president, before swearing in, I told him that I don't want to be a minister in Nigeria.
Why, sir?
I'm contented. I mean, you see, people take what they don't need. I'm contented. You see, there's what we call, when we were in school, we were taught the principle of contentment. You don't keep money you do not need, that you will never use, until you die. It's useless.
But is it about the money? Isn't it about service in that capacity?
No. Let me put it this way. I said I don't want to be a minister because either two, where are the ministers? They cannot talk. A lot of people who have been ministers in Nigeria till now, can they talk? Can they bring any policy? Can they do anything? When I rejected being a minister from the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, I accepted to be the chairman of the Legal Aid Council of Nigeria. He was the one who gave me that appointment. I didn't take a car. I didn't take a salary. I was not involved in anything, but I did the job. I was going to prison to wash prison houses, removing people who are sick and making sure. I moved an application before Justice Kutigi as the chairman of Legal Aid Council to quash that obnoxious law of withholding charge. We had persons who had been in prison for upward of 2 years to 8-10 years under withholding charge. There's no such thing in law. And I'm very happy we did. We quashed it at the time. We went to prisons where I saw Sheriff too. Sheriff was an ex-prisoner. He's a murderer. He murdered a woman, a lady, who he stole his black Mercedes Benz. So what I'm trying to say in effect is, even Sheriff came to plead with me that I should leave that issue because nobody knows about that issue except me. Okay, so what I'm trying to say in effect is that the president has exercised his right as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to appoint ministers. These ministers that I've appointed, they have their good, the bad, and the ugly. There's no way the president would die safer, but constitutionally, the president is obligated to appoint ministers. Who he appoints as ministers is a personal choice and decision. Nobody can question it. You see, let us not ask for what is impossible under the law. He's the only person charged with that power to appoint ministers. Now, he has exercised that power. He has appointed ministers across the country. These ministers will prove themselves. These ministers have a duty to Nigerians. These ministers have a duty. So you will see, appointing them is one. Under the Information Freedom Bill, a lot will happen. If you remember when Obasanjo enacted the EFCC law, I had said at the time, I granted an interview and I said at the time that, look, this law Obasanjo has enacted will have a ripple effect that will live with us for the rest of our lives. You have Bauer in detention right now. Is that correct?
Yes.
The man who started EFCC is now the NFA. So you can imagine, it will only get better. There are things you cannot hide. You have ministers that their names threw up, but it fizzled and was no longer there after some investigations, after some findings and whatever. So these ones are ministers now. They are not above the law. They can be sued. Things will come up. You will hear a lot of things shortly. And democracy is a process. Let us give them the opportunity. Are you there? Of fair hearing. Let them do what... I was a minister. My president at the time, President Jonathan, didn't know how I came up with the creation of 13 universities. Today, those universities is what has brought the pressure and tension of our children down. But I did it. They didn't know how I quashed the law of WAEC. They didn't know how I made it possible for people to do 5 credits and go to school. Before then, it was a nonsense law that says you must do 9 credits, 8 credits for it. But I quashed all of that. So what I'm trying to say in effect is that let us see what they will bring on board for the good and greatness. I'm very, very unhappy. That's why I said I don't want to be a minister. I haven't been a minister. If you give me another ministerial appointment, what are you going to call me when I finish? Former minister. Already I'm a former minister. So why do I want to carry all of those baggage and makes no money? So they are younger people. They are ministers now. And then let them tell the country, let us allow them freedom to prove to us that they are ministers and they know what they're doing. That's my position.
All right, so let's divert a little bit again and then talk about the Niger coup and ECOWAS resolution with regards to either the diplomatic resolution or the military resolutions. What are your thoughts in that regard?
Speaking strongly as a Nigerian, my advice is that President Tinubu should not fall for the game to go into war. To go into war with Niger will be uncalled for. First, we don't have the resources. No matter the support the Western world is promising to give, it will not be to our advantage. It will be a war that is internally against itself. You have to wipe out 8 states in Nigeria for you to succeed in that war. 8 states from the north. I believe that there are some game playing out that maybe the president is not aware of. And if I give this strong advice as a criminologist who know a little bit in this country, I will say all that is the option on the table should be a diplomatic resolution of whatever it is. To go into an open war with Niger, the repercussions post the war will leave us with very, very unpleasant tastes. Now, how do you go to a war when half of the country says, no, we don't want the Arewa. I'm aware the Arewa Consultative Forum held a meeting overnight in Kaduna and reached a decision and made a communique that we don't want this war, number one. The Senate, basically with members from those 8 states that will be affected.
The shares border with the Niger.
That will be affected, mobilized, and the Senate rejected the request of the president to go to war. On what basis? Which country is sponsoring the war? Are you ignoring the Senate of your country to say you are going to war? How are you going to explain it? So what I'm saying in effect is that it will do us no good. You don't go into a venture that you will lose, and you will lose. It's not going to work. Are you going to sack all those senators? Are you going to sack the entire Senate? Are we in a going back to a military arrangement where you just take decision abruptly to say you are doing stuff? I think Tinubu is wiser than that, if you ask me.
All right, so our time is fast spent, but in 1 minute.
That is not where we are headed. That is not where we should head. And my advice, strongly, is that he should do nothing to go to war. There are all diplomatic channels that... We had the same thing before. Obasanjo did it. The man is thirsty for what have you, money or power or what have you. Give him 1 year. He's a member of the country. Give him 1 year and say, if you want, change to become a civilian president.
Go and wear your agbada.
Wear agbada, like we have done here.
And dump the khaki.
Dump the khaki. And take over. So there are diplomatic ways to solve these problems. You know, we cannot afford war. We don't have money. We don't have the money. We don't have what it takes. You are going to war with insurgency in the north when you have not been able to quell them totally. I don't think anybody who is doing that. They are just looking for another opportunity to ferry out the resources of the country. And that's not where we should go.
All right. In 1 minute, let's just get your thoughts with regards to, in all of this, what if everything happens and it doesn't fall to your favor? The petition that was filed and then the judgment comes forth, but then you recall that whatever justice, a judgment that comes forth, and then even when it gets to the Supreme Court and that's the last, what would be your plan B? Is there a plan B, or we just move on?
There will be a plan B, but that's not for this discussion. What I'm just saying is that black is black, white is white. The situation we find ourselves and we have at our disposal is not one that envisages anything to the contrary.
All right.
Judgment will come our way.
Thank you so much, Kenneth Gbagi. It's been a wonderful time having this talk with you.
Thank you very much.
All right, viewers, that's where we end this conversation. We have been chatting with Kenneth Gbagi, who is SDP's governorship candidate in Delta State, and I'm sure you must have been rightly educated, entertained, and informed. I will see you next time. Keep watching the conversation because you never know who my next guest will be and what I will be discussing of next. Until I come your way again, from the nation's capital, Abuja, I am Annabelle Oji. God bless you and yours. God bless Nigeria.